IVM.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 27 of the Fighting G.O.A.T, where me, Somesh, Superhuman Kamra, and your host and host, Arjun, aka Mystic Chips, Chipalkatti, will run you through a very, very exciting episode with what happened last week with the aced fight referee, Steve Mazzagatti, who's here with us.
He's coming up.
And a lot more just on episode 27 of the Fighting G.O.A.T. But before we get into it, we'll take a short commercial break and see you on the other side.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Last Man Standing is the Battle of the Biscuits, Britannia versus ITC, as Anupam and Ambi discuss ITC's aggressive play to break into Britannia's strong market hold. On Cyrus Says, mountaineer Aditya Gupta talks about his book 7 Lessons from Everest. Why is the Mopla Rebellion of 1921 causing such a stir in Kerala? An eye-opening conversation on the wire talks between Siddharth and Manu Pillai. On All Things Policy, Mihir talks to researchers Anirudh Tagat and Saksham Singh about the dark sides to the ease of use of smartphone financial apps. And on Advertising is Dead, Varun speaks to Samir Nair, CEO of Applause Entertainment. They talk about where the future of media lies. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week on the network, C8 Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quarter, CoinSwitch Kuber, and Intuit India. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 27 of the Fighting G.O.A.T. So as I said, it is going to be the week that was. Steve Mazzagatti in the house with us.
Oh,
and
man.
obviously,
Steve's coming
what
on.
is coming up in the coming week?
Dude, Steve Mazzagatti coming onto the show is going to be a big deal.
Well,
Guys,
he's
if you
gonna be with
don't,
us.
he's a 40-year-old, he's not 40-year-old, sorry, he's 60-plus-year-old referee who's had 40 years of experience in boxing and mixed martial arts. He is going to be coming live and exclusive, live on our show, only on the Fighting G.O.A.T, so don't miss out on the special episode. But Somesh, before we get there, before we get to Steve, which is in a while, we still have to do due diligence of what happened in the fight week that was.
Oh man, it was such a crazy, crazy fight card because the man himself, Paddy Pimblett, made his UFC debut.
Dude, have you seen the memes? They're already out. They've got what's on Dana's mind, and they've used the same hair of Paddy Pimblett's hair.
Well, Paddy Pimblett's first UFC fight, and he has surpassed 7 years of that particular gentleman. I can't even forget his name. There's an Englishman called Leon Edwards, and he has surpassed him on Instagram as one of the most liked fighters in the world.
I don't want to say what it is, but I don't want to say what it is. But
7 years versus one fight, like 7 years, one fight, 7 years, one
See,
fight.
that's a thing, it's such a weird thing. It's hype trains are something else.
Seriously.
Leon, my heart goes out to him because he's such a warrior of a fighter. He's a badass who's on a different planet. But it's so funny. It's a polarizing figure. Even Paddy said this to Brett Okamoto, saying that you either love me or hate me, but you're still watching me. And that's all that it matters.
Yes.
That's all that matters.
Absolutely. And first UFC fight, round one, he finished it off. And plus took home $50,000
Dude,
as a bonus.
The bull rush, he went in with those hooks, those massive hooks. He came in, threw caution to the wind and got that knockout.
Man, it was so beautiful to watch. In fact, some of these guys who were hyped really deserve it because he came in and he lived up to it. And it was so beautiful to watch because he came in there, he did what he had to do, and he's the kind of guy that you just need to have the camera on. He's such a character.
Dude, and Dana's been
a character.
Dana's been promoting him. Dana's been, has been talking about him. So he's clearly made a mark, and there's no better way of making that mark stronger, Teja style, than by winning. Making the mark stronger, Teja style.
Oh God.
Stupid joke I cracked.
Andaz apna lives within our system,
Of
so
course,
I cannot blame him for that.
But on a serious note, also one more thing that happened in the week was Khalil Roundtree, who finished his fight with an oblique kick. That one right there with the one that John Jones uses.
Yes.
The one straight to the thigh, right above the knee. and is to hyperextend that knee, and his opponent took one of those and the fight was over. He had to.
The game. Yeah.
And so that sparked a debate, everywhere, saying that should those, that's a great question that we're going to ask Steve as well. Should that strike actually? I think there should be some strikes that should be outlawed.
No, I mean, not really. Of course, I'm not the best person to speak about this, but very surprisingly,
why, man? Come on, we both spar, and I think I'd be pissed off if somebody started using oblique kicks, and if they try to hyperextend my knee in basic sparring also.
Well, it's legal. It's legal. In fact, quite surprisingly, when we spoke to Robert Whittaker about this, he in fact used it heavily on Darren Till, and Darren Till was in hospital for I think a couple of months after that because he had some major damage on that knee.
Yeah, can you imagine while pivoting forward for a strike, somebody comes and goes smack, and Jones was a master. Silva did it as well.
Yeah,
but Jones, nobody did better than Jones, man.
I love that.
Hitting you from Panvel, he used to stand in Panvel and hit you in Kurla, and the reach that he used, fucking hyperextended it till fucking VT. I don't know, guys. Today's been a weird day. It's a late podcast. We've been recording late at night now. Maybe it's the tension of talking to Steve coming up.
I know Steve is coming up. It's just about 10 minutes and Steve will be with us. But before that, the fight card looked pretty decent on paper. But what really happened in the octagon, they were all finishes except for one fight. They were all finishes. And how beautiful is that?
Man, I love all finishes.
Derek Brunson versus Darren Till, the main event of the evening.
Yep.
Obviously, it was 80% that voted in favor of Darren Till to win this.
I know. I was one of those 80%. I lost.
But man, I mean, I definitely said Derek Brunson. So for a change, I have won. For a change.
But man, props to, somebody should smack me across the face for doing that, because Derek Brunson has had a resurgence in his career.
Absolutely, yes.
Brunson got beat up by Israel Adesanya long back.
Yeah.
Long back. He got embarrassed by Israel Adesanya.
Right.
And then after which he just turned it around.
Absolutely.
Grappling has become something else too.
With his coach Henry Hooft, in fact, even his striking has been beautiful. He's in a 5-fight winning streak.
That's incredible.
Darren Till in his last 4 has won only 1 and he's lost 3 in the middleweight category.
I think he won against I think he lost to Whittaker. He's lost to Brunson. I think he won against, I can't remember who he won against.
Well,
it's been a while though. It's not been anytime recent.
Yeah, it's not a recent thing, but he defeated Kelvin Gastelum.
Yes, he defeated Gastelum.
This was way back in 2009. But since September 2018, he has been losing. So he lost to Tyron Woodley. Then he lost to Jorge Masvidal, which is that massive left hook.
Then he got submitted by Woodley as well, if I remember correctly. He got caught in a Das choke.
Yes.
Woodley.
Yes, he got submitted. And then he defeated Kelvin Gastelum. And after that, he lost to Robert Whittaker. And he has now lost to Derek Brunson.
Yeah, but come on. Darren Till is still very elite. He's right up there. It wasn't a one-sided washout. It was still a fight.
True.
And he got caught in a submission. And we heard it in his post-fight conference. He was a little emotional. Yeah. And he was upset that he lost. But he was like, I'm a fighter. And this shit happens. Yeah. And I want everybody to just focus on that aspect. Like these guys put their lives and their entire careers on the line for each fight. You never know how it can end. It can end with a leg break. You can go into hospital. You can even sometimes even the worst can happen.
Very true. Very true. So, but thankfully, none of that happened. And he was absolutely fine post the fight. However, there's a lot more coming up because Darren Till, yes, is going to have a resurgence. We absolutely know that. He's a character. He's an extremely talented fighter, but kudos because this night belonged to Derek Brunson.
Absolutely, man. And it was a bit of a slow week, especially after the previous week that was where we talked about was Woodley versus the Paul brothers, and all that nonsense. But we've got a lot more to cover only on the Fighting GOAT. And yes, you heard it right, ladies and gentlemen. We've been hyping this up for a while. After this quick commercial break, we're going to come back with the one and only, one of the UFC veterans, one of the UFC veteran referees, Mr. Steve Mazzagatti. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a quick commercial break.
Eventually, you'll see the end of your childhood,
Get accustomed to womanhood.
enjoy the experience of sisterhood,
Might get to wifehood
or not, choose motherhood,
or not. You'll learn to define your personhood.
earn a livelihood,
Change the neighborhood.
and get rid of the falsehood that life post-academia is easy.
So join me, Natasha,
And me, Ayushi,
on a journey from station starting point.
to station, what now?
Next station, Pudin station, and hopefully, Agla station, adulthood.
Fresh episodes out every Thursday.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 28 of the Fighting Goat, where we have a very special guest, none other than veteran referee Steve Mazzagatti, as we promised, right here in person with us. Steve, welcome to the show. And man,
Hey.
you're looking young as ever.
Thanks for having me. You know, this gray hair don't mean nothing.
Man, no, you can't, it took me a few minutes to recognize Steve, but you can't. You always remember those eyes. You see them right in the middle of the octagon. And
Yeah.
Steve, you got it. Now, this is the first time you're on the Fighting Goat. You got to do your catchphrase. Come on.
All right, let's do it. Bring it on. Come on.
Love that. We love that. Steve,
Oh,
so let's
man,
just
that's
get
amazing.
straight into it. First of all, thank you so much for making time for this. We know it's 8 a.m. your time and you've woken up, you're looking crisp. But man, we were waiting for you to be on the show. Man, we've never been so excited. We've had some really, really big guests, but this is going to be really special. So thank you so much
sir.
for making time. And
Thank
let's
you.
hit it straight off. Let's hit it straight off.
All right, Somesh, go. You got to get the ball started before I get into, So Steve, it's going to work in a different way. Still, Somesh is going to ask you all the serious questions, and I'm going to ask you all the kind of questions that gets me punched in the face.
Yes.
That kind of stuff. So it's going to be a fun one. Let's get this going.
Well, yes. So the first question that I have for you, Steve, is the world knows you as a premier MMA referee, but your actual day job is that of a firefighter. So how did this entire transition of a firefighter to a ref come about? And how do you really manage your day? Because there are times you have to be, in between so many fights, kind of, officiating on one side, but on the other side, you have a job at the Las Vegas, Nevada Fire Department. So how does that really work for you?
I'm now retired, but I was a firefighter for 25 years. Most all of us have a job. This isn't really a career. It's more of a hobby. We all have different jobs, police officers, school teachers, whatever. I'm a firefighter and I have to report every other, I work 24-hour shifts, or I did work 24-hour shifts, and we just take vacation time. If we don't if that scheduled event isn't during a break time, then we have to take a vacation day. And that's how it works. You just burn up your vacation time.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
But one thing, the whole firefighter experience, because we are medically trained, we save lives in the field, heart attacks, trauma, different things like that. It gave me the medical knowledge to deal with the kind of things that we deal with as far as trauma goes, when a guy gets knocked out, things like that. Early on, I could, in some of the smaller shows, I could actually help out medically if those kind of situations, happen. But the bigger events, they're pretty dialed, man. We got like the best doctors in the world. They're all highly skilled trauma doctors, far more advanced than the average Joe.
So, Steve, I'm going to jump right in there because, this is going to be a perfect segue for my question. The fact that you mentioned that, your firefighting training gave you the experience of understanding when a fighter is in deep trouble. And would you agree with this? See, this is the point that I've seen. I worked as a commentator with multiple smaller organizations, and we've been watching fighting since the referees wore cameras on their heads in Pride, which is awesome, by the way. I'm going to come back to that later. But my question here is, like, for example, when you saw Minotauro Nogueira break his arm, Frank Mir break Nog's arm, do you ever feel when you're in a position where the fighter is too tough for his own good? And do you ever feel that in a position that you might want to stop a fight prematurely just so you can avoid a certain break or a snap or, further damage that, a fighter can sustain?
There are rules, and whenever you question any kind of a call, you just have to follow the rules. Now, there are different levels of fighters. You know, you got your A class fighters, your B class fighters, your C class fighters. The level that I was working is the best of the best. I mean, these guys didn't step off the bus yesterday, you know. And if you train in martial arts, striking, ground game, whatever, you know what it's like to be punched in the face. And you're talking fractions of an inch that make the difference. I mean, that's why they call it the sweet science of boxing, right? Because you're, you know, the average person sitting down with a can of beer, watching a fight, they might not understand that a guy's actually not getting hit. He's defending himself. He's blocking the stuff. A lot of the punches are even missing, you know, so there's just so much you got to take into consideration while it's going down. As far as toughness at that level, a lot of times we'll find ourselves in a position, man, I got to find a way to get this guy out of here. But I'm not going to take his opportunity away super, super high level. Now, if it's his first fight, second fight, he's getting punched ridiculous. I mean, we're talking, you know, then But if a fighter still, and you can tell, you know, I mean, just by the way people are acting. And in the dressing room, I would go over the rules really extensively, and we'd have little code signs to, hey, I'll help you out of there. If you want out of there, blame it on me. Just, you know, like if, you know, I can tell if they turtle up and just don't do anything, I'll take you out of there, you know. So those are the little things. If they're fighting back and they still have a fighter's chance, how can you take their opportunity?
No, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's something that you saw. Say, for example, what we saw a couple of weeks back with a guy like Chris Moutinho, who was taking shot after shot from Somesh's favorite fighter, and Sugar Sean O'Malley.
Yeah, and I know, right? That guy's I was at that fight. Yeah,
exactly. And you saw him take, now, but Moutinho kept walking forward. He never, even though he took all that damage, he was never in trouble. Vis-a-vis, you compare it to, say, somebody like when Anthony Smith fought John Jones, and he was in the turtle position with Jones just kneeing him, and the fight wasn't stopped. So, you know, that's what I'm asking. You know, I think it's one of the toughest things in the world to be able to guess and make that call to try and defend the fighter at that time. Right. It's ridiculous.
Well, that is one of everybody does different and every situation is different. But what you just explained is what I tell these fighters in the dressing room. You can't just turtle up and totally defend yourself. There's a difference between, and John Jones is good at just throwing so much pressure at you that you have no choice but to, you know, defend and then wait for that split second where he stops so that you can launch your attack. But if the fighter's not fighting back, and he gets even stuck in like the crucifixes we used to see back in the day, or just totally held down and can't defend themselves. It's an individual call. You know, we're all individuals in the end.
True.
Right.
Thanks so much, Steve.
That's beautifully worded. In fact, Steve, my next question for you is there any specific incident, you know, be it in the locker room or maybe back in the hotel, where something about a certain fighter has taken you by surprise? You know, like maybe there's somebody who's very calm, who suddenly lost his cool, or someone who's very aggressive, who just seemed to be very calm. Is there any such personal incident in your life which is fun that you would like to share with us? Something back in the locker room, maybe, you know, sitting in the stands, or, you know, maybe just
almost every time I went in the dressing room, it was amazing. You know, I mean, fighting, you know, these fighters, I don't care who you are, they're scared. You know, it's just human nature. You know, I mean, you're in a fight, but none of them have ever been disrespectful. They're extremely calm. They're trying to get in their zone. And I got to be respectful of that too. I try to go in early. I try to get down face to face. A lot of times they're not even listening. They're doing their thing in their head, but I have to try to grab their attention and come down to their level and try to reach out to them. And I don't want to mention any individual names, but some of the baddest dudes I've ever seen turned out to be some of the scaredest guys in the dressing room.
Really?
You know?
Really?
But maybe that's how, I mean.
Like who? Give me a hint. Just you know, just don't say their names.
He's fighting real soon. Let's just say that. And he's a badass. And I'm not saying he's scared. I'm just saying that's how everybody deals with these situations differently, you know?
Right.
I mean, I can't imagine them not being, their adrenaline rushing. I would be scared to death. I mean, you're going to be in a fight. And we've seen a lot of guys, I mean, they've come down to the last minute and just couldn't walk out and had to pull out of the fight, even in the UFC. Right. So the amount of adrenaline, and fighters like Mike Tyson have talked about it, just walking out there, I was scared to death. But as soon as that bell rang, it's freaking game on. And that's the way a lot of these fighters are. Some of them are better actors than others, you know. But in the end, they're scared, and people deal with things differently. You know, right? I'm the kind of guy that when I'm scared, I jump out and take it. You know, who's going to step up first and volunteer? That's me. You know, I'll be the first guy because I want to get it over with, and then everybody can screw up after me or whatever. You know, so
that's a good attitude. I like
that. I mean, you got to punch life in the face with, you know, a zest, right? You'll never go anywhere. Whether it's business, podcasting, whatever. You just got to give it all. And these guys are giving it all to fighting. You know, when it's your first fight, you're training in a gym, you want to give it a try. Like my Indian friend, let me give a shout out to Paley. Sorry I couldn't pronounce his last name, but he's a kid out of one of the local areas there in India, and I follow him. He's had one fight, he's getting ready for another one, and you know, he's at the beginning of his career. Some of these guys that have been fighting, you know, 15, 20 fights, it's a different, you know, mindset for them, and they've learned how to deal with that stress in different ways, you know.
That's true. That's you know, it's which brings me to you know, another aspect of the entire thing. You've been around since since we started watching fighting. It's been a long career. And now that the sport has just been growing, it's been growing and growing and growing, getting more and more evolved as we speak. Do you think that it becomes, you know, I'm not saying that there was, the responsibility was lesser, say 15 years ago, but I'm saying, do you think that with more eyeballs on the sport, and with more and more people getting into the sport, your responsibility as a veteran referee becomes that much more serious, becomes that much more, your shoulders are that much more heavier with the burden of making sure that you got to set an example every time you're out there. Do you feel that pressure sometimes going in, knowing that you've been a veteran for over 20 years, you know, and you're stepping into the pocket that way?
I've been involved in the sport for 40 years at the highest level. Actually, 50 years when I first started my martial arts training.
Jeez, how old are you?
I'm 61. Like I said, this gray hair don't mean nothing, you know. Anyway, what I'm saying is, it's always a load on your shoulders. I started out, you know, as a fight trainer, but going into my referee, and I think I originally started in 1989, started doing kickboxing shows. Wow. And then we started, you know, I live in the fight capital of the world, Las Vegas, you know. So I did the amateur boxing. Then I moved on to K1, all the big K1 shows out of Vegas, and then eventually the UFC type MMA shows, you know. So when you step into the ring, you got somebody's life, livelihood, and everything there, you know, so you can't take any of that lightly. Like I said, I do look at things as, you know, a beginning fighter as opposed to a fighter that's depends on, you know, his career. This is actually more of a career. I don't care what certain promoters say, you know.
Yeah.
They don't, you can't go and train like these guys train in 5 different disciplines in MMA and try to hold down a job. I guess some guys can, God bless them, but you know, it's tough.
It is. I mean, Stipe did. He was a firefighter as well. He still is a firefighter and is a 2-time champion, and you know, he's held it up there for the longest time. But you know, it's just a, you know, I always ask anybody who's part of the sport the same question: is you know, it's maintaining that level, always that level, that standard, and especially doing it for so long, and then the pressure is harder and harder and heavier and heavier. And you know, as spectators and commentators, when you see the big title fights. And it's ridiculous, and sometimes it's so easy to get caught up in that entire moment. Especially when, did you ever get starstruck while looking at some of the greatest of the great, like seeing Anderson Silva in that ring do what he does, or GSP, or you know, I think Somesh, you were telling me Steve was the referee for JDS And Hunt?
Well, Steve, in fact, was doing, if I'm not mistaken, UFC 160 when I was there. JDS versus Mark Hunt was one of the fights that you were officiating. And there was also Jose Aldo and Frankie Edgar.
Oh, man.
So
I've done some great fights. I did the first Nick Diaz, Robbie Lawler fight too. That was actually
one of the first. That was 20 plus years ago.
And that was one of the first super exciting. I knew it was a big fight after it happened. You know, I mean, at the time, they're both kind of up and comers. But when you see a great performance, you know, I ref John Jones's first fight, you know, this guy's going somewhere. You know, Israel Asayanda, when I first saw him fight, I said, this guy's going somewhere. You can tell, you know, and you realize that this is epic, you know, and these guys are incredible. And do I get starstruck? Not really. You know, in the end, they're just people like me and you. You know, they do a different thing. I'm extremely grateful. I've had the opportunity to hang out with some of the greatest. I've hung out with the entire Gracie family.
Fantastic.
You know, I met Chuck Norris, all the greats, you know, dined with Gene LaBelle. I mean, it's just hung out with Evel Knievel. I mean, the opportunities offered me, I don't take lightly, you know, I appreciate, but I don't know that I'm necessarily starstruck because in the end, they're just like me and you. They just do a different job that happens to be high profile.
Right. Steve, so, you know, just to complete my question, you've been a part of such legendary fights, you know, as I rightly said, you know, there is Junior Dos Santos versus Mark Hunt. There's a Frankie Edgar versus a Jose Aldo. There's Uriah Hall versus Chris Lieben and all these guys that you were a part of. So you were the third man in the octagon at that point of time. Which was the one fight that actually gave you butterflies going into? You know, like normally the fighters have butterflies, but was there any one fight or moment where you said, holy shit, this is going to be difficult or it's going to be fun for me?
You know, I get the butterfly. I mean, I think we get the butterflies on every fight. It is as the MMA grew and you would start jumping in the ring in main events of huge fights, you could feel the energy. It's you know, I mean, you got 20, 30,000 people and you're at the center of all this, although you're not the focal point. It's like you're at the center point of a speaker and you can just hear sound coming from you at all ends. But part of the job, and another thing I learned from the fire department, is you got to take some deep breaths. And I'm sure the fighters are doing the same thing. They have to find their happy place, you know, and stay calm. I've seen fighters dump their entire load before they even got in the ring, you know? I think just walking up there, getting through the announcements and stuff. But once a fight starts, everything disappears.
I'm already guessing.
But as an official, you just want to do the best you can from the very start. So you got to be completely focused on what you're doing. You just shut all those people out and go with it. Yeah. And you've seen fighters get totally disrupted by fighting in a large crowd when they never have.
Right.
True.
You know, that's a lot of stress. It is different.
Yeah, you hear a lot of commentators talk about, you know, moving up to the bigger stage, you know, hitting the big time under the lights, the pressure. And, you know, you got Joe Rogan and especially Daniel Cormier drew references to seeing championship, you know, the difference between a champion and a contender. And they could see the minute you're under the lights, the cameras, the interviews, all that. And then just, you know, moving forward into my next question and my last serious question, I promise, is, you know, you see so many referees around the world doing, you know, refereeing, you know, smaller and smaller organizations to bigger organizations. And, you know, in this kind of sport, if you work for a fight company, everybody knows how to fight. It doesn't matter who you are. Everybody's learned basic boxing. They've learned something. They know how to throw hands no matter what. Do you ever see, you know, you've seen videos and clips on YouTube of referees, you know, trying to take matters into their own hands in a situation where a fighter's lost control? I saw a couple of clips recently where fighter was, you know, the fight was over. The fighter was knocked out. The referee made the perfect call, but the fighter shot into the referee for a double. And the referee locked him in a guillotine, the standing guillotine, and then dropped him the way Jones dropped Machida against the cage. And now, so hang on. Now I get it. He knows how to fight. I'm sure referees know all the moves as well. But my point is, where do you draw the line? I'm sure somewhere there has to be some sort of punishment for doing something like that. Because the guy is, yes, sure, the referee is defending himself, but come on, man, you don't turn into you don't turn on a full-fledged guillotine and get him choked out as well. He already got knocked out. Now you can choke him out as well. So, you know what I mean by this kind of stuff. You've seen that in the smaller organizations.
Hey, you got to subdue an aggressive attack. I mean, that's what they're trained to do, drop you and choke you out. I mean, I've had to defend myself a couple of times.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, they get knocked out. They're still fighting. You've seen the videos of the guy that gets knocked out and he's laying flat out on the canvas, still throwing punches, They've been focused their entire life on keep moving. So they're not necessarily know where they're at. And I didn't have to, go to that extreme. And you gotta, referees got to start somewhere also, so as you get up to the higher levels, a lot of these things you've seen in the smaller shows, you've maybe put it through your mind and that should be dealt with a different way, like you're saying, but in the end, the thing is to try to keep the fighter from hurting somebody else, hurting himself, and maybe even getting in more trouble. I've had fighters that start getting angry and I said, dude, you're going to cost yourself money. This is going to cost you money, because the commissions fine fighters at the level I work at. We don't work for the promoters. No official works for the promoters, at least here. We work for an athletic commission. And like I said, ultimately, the rules say everything that we need to know. As long as you know the rules, you have all the answers you need.
True. Very well put.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Steve, there's also one question which in fact came to me via Instagram when we kind of announced, that you would be here next. A lot of Indian fighters want to know, what do high-level officials talk to the athletes inside the locker room? So, when there's a main event, there's obviously a lot of conversation that happens with the top two athletes inside the locker room and the referee. So apart from the rules, what else is spoken to them? Something which, the regular human outside or the regular fan doesn't know about.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I can only speak for myself on that. But like I said, I go into the locker room. I try to get there as soon as they come in. I don't want to interrupt their focusing part. The first thing I'll say to them is, do you have any concerns or questions? And then they can get that off their mind right away. A lot of them would ask me about the downward elbow. I think we've got that straightened out now over the years, but whatever, they might say something about the other fighter. Can you watch this? Can you watch that? Almost every one of them tell you, don't stop the fight too early. I can take a lot of punishment. Which is,
wow.
I mean, almost all of them say it.
Hang on, let me guess who said that. Tony Ferguson, Chris Lieben, Nate Diaz, Robbie Lawler.
Because this is it, man. For them at this level, they're spilling the beans right here. There's no turning back. It's make it or break it at this level. Now, if you're just a club fighting in a local card, that's a whole different thing.
Right.
But so anyway, I'll start off with the questions and then I'll just go. I only talk about the rules that, look, we all know you can't throw the guy over the cage.
Right.
We all know you can't poke him in the eyes, Certain things we know, you can't kick him in the groin. But it's the things like, do you understand where the back of the head, which I've been criticized a lot for enforcing back of the head strikes, because early on, and it doesn't happen so much anymore because even the fighters have evolved. Dudes are just smashing the back of dudes' heads. I mean, it's just natural when a jiu-jitsu guy pulls guard on you and you're a wrestler trying to ground and pound him. He kind of curls up into a ball into your chest, and the only thing you got to hit is the back of his head. I said, Don't go for that. Don't take that target. It will cost you. And I will pull out my cell phone. I'll lay it on the back of my head. I said, if you hit this target, it's going to be all bad for you. I said, if he's turning his head into your strike, that's his problem. But if I can justify the fact that you're looking at it and hitting it, it's going to be all bad. So, and then I'll go on to the 12-6 elbow. Do you understand this 12-6 elbow? It's heaven to hell, straight up and down.
Yeah.
And, not sideways. if you're going to find yourself in a position to throw that elbow, you got to put at least a 45 on it and give it one of these, or, it can't, why, I don't know. I don't make the rules. I think it's a silly rule, but it is what it is. And that's what an official's job is, to enforce the rules,
Right. So, so with someone like a Jose Aldo that doesn't understand English, is there a translator that kind of, bridges a gap, or, you talk to him and he's like, oh yeah, ref, I understood, very good. And, I will do my job and stuff. So how does it work with someone like a Brazilian who doesn't understand the language?
Or a Russian like Peter Yan, who just, who missed the knee to a downed opponent right there.
Yeah, it's a problem. There's no doubt about it. In the dressing room, they all have interpreters, I mean, there's always somebody around that can speak English that you could grab and go over it. But once a fight starts, it becomes extremely difficult. A lot of the boxing referees here in Nevada learn Spanish too, because we have a lot of Mexican fighters and Latin American fighters, early on, I said, man, I got to learn how to speak a few of this stuff too, Portuguese, especially,
I think I heard you sing a few lines of Portuguese in the middle.
Yeah.
Sometimes between just the Brazilian fighters.
Well, what happened is I was saying, no cabasa, which is a sausage. It's cabeza. I guess
cabeza, la cabeza.
Yeah. So I said, well, that's not going to work because I'm jacking it all up, And then, like you said, I'd have to learn Korean, Chinese. It just never ends, So here in America, we just like to hope that most of the fighters speak a little bit of English, because it's pretty common language around the world.
True. Right. True. But it's just it's such a funny thing, because of sometimes things getting lost in translation. You have a couple of fighters who, let's just say, don't remember the rules, or maybe they understood and still didn't remember them. I mean, I don't have to take names. We all know these guys, the eye pokes and the groin strikes and the phantom groin strikes as well. If anybody remembers Josh Koscheck, I love that guy, man. He was amazing. But especially when it comes to, say, I know every fight is important, whether you're fighting in a club or you're fighting for the title. But I would say when there's a chance of, there are a lot of things at stake. Like it's when it's champion versus champion, across divisions, where a fight can go a little bit longer. Like especially when Khabib fought Conor, took a couple of liberties. Shots to the back of the head, knee to the head, held the cage for as long as he wants. And, I don't know. I don't remember who ref that fight, but he wasn't penalized. So sometimes do referees show a little bit of leniency in the extreme high stake fights? Sometimes do you see that leniency? Do you feel that, I'm not talking about you, maybe not you in particular, but somebody else, have you ever noticed a little bit of leniency in the higher the stakes the fights go?
Well, I can only speak for myself, and I got to tell you got to have the balls to make the calls. And when that kind of stuff goes down and another fighter breaks the rules, and it, like you said, back of the head strikes, in boxing, guys fall over like they're dying from it, but we let it go on here like nothing happened, and groin strikes and stuff. Yeah. But for a referee to stop a fight, take a point, there's a lot of pressure. I mean,
true.
A lot of people don't see these things happening, and it's like, bam, split second. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily giving any kind of leniency towards any one fighter, but there is pressure from maybe the promoters talking crap about you afterwards. And I was kind of coming
to that though later.
It's there. It's very political. There's no doubt about it. And I've got myself in a lot of trouble for making the proper calls. I'm sorry. I'm hired to do a job, and I don't take that lightly. If I see something go down, why should one fighter get pounded in the back of the head by another fighter because that other fighter's the new star or whatever? Why should he be allowed to break any of these rules? And grabbing the cage is a big one. But each one of these rules you got to take in a different thing. A quick grab of the cage, as long as it didn't affect the fight. But if a fighter uses the cage to completely pull himself around and on top of that fighter, okay, stop. We got a problem, dude. You can't do that. And we start the fight standing, because I'm not going to let you grab a dominant position, or I'll start him back in the position that the fighter grabbed the cage and rolled himself over on top of the fighter. Like I said, it takes the balls to make the calls, and that's another thing that as you're going up in the ranks and the levels, you know, guys don't want to get on the internet and everybody criticizing them, you know, for making a call that was right.
True. No, I'm sure fighters get into, you know, I've seen it happen in smaller organizations where referees have made the right call or not made the right calls. And the first thing is you see the corners and the coaches jumping all over them and all over the referee. And it's a tough call, man. It's a tough job.
Absolutely.
But somebody's got to do it, right?
Somebody's got to. You got to do
it. Well, you cannot please everybody.
For sure. And believe me, the last thing I expected to happen was to blow up into some kind of person that everybody knows because I'm ref of fights. That was not my intention. Maybe some of these guys want to be famous and, you know, think they're going to get on Facebook and put all these pictures of them doing all this stuff, you know, but that was not my intention. I hate the fact that anybody recognizes me, you know, or yeah, I'm just a normal guy. You know, I'd love you guys to come out, take a ride in the dune buggy. I'll show you around Vegas, that kind of thing. But in the end, we're all just normal people, whether they're fighters or anything. I think a lot of people have a hard time dealing with the notoriety part of it once it happens.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. But honestly, I mean, as much time as I've spent around, I won't say all fighters. I just say the majority of fighters. It's been amazing. They've usually been really normal, fun people, except maybe one or two. I'm not going to say who. But yeah, they've been usually a lot of fun. Everybody's just been absolutely normal and just ready to have a good time. You know, go out. We all went to a sports bar, had a couple of beers, and just had a great time.
Yeah, exactly. Just normal guys, man. But I appreciate those fighters that sell themselves both in and out of the ring. You know, they market themselves well. And we've seen those guys. We've seen great, phenomenal fighters that had zero personality. But then we see mediocre fighters that had all kinds of personality and did pretty darn good. You know, so it's an important part of the sport and something that every fighter needs to learn to somehow, you know, and there's a famous saying, you know, 50% of the people love you, 50% of the people hate you, but you got 100% participation.
Oh, yes.
Very true. Very true.
Right?
Very true.
I like that a lot.
You put butts in the seats, you give it a hell of a fight. Whether you win or lose, it doesn't matter, man. People will love you. You know, you go out there and kick their ass, but, you know, you ran around the ring and didn't fight. Yeah, people might not like you so much, you know.
I'm going to tell my producer to put pictures to whatever you're saying so that everybody knows who you're talking about, because I know who you're talking about. I really do.
Well, but, even all the way back to Muhammad Ali back in my early years, you know, I mean, everybody criticized him for, you know, running around and not fighting. And then we have Mayweather, you know, Floyd, you know, same thing. But as a fighter and as a striker, I can appreciate the sweet science that he's putting out there. You know, people don't realize the sport is about hitting and not getting hit. And he's a master at that. Although it might not, we'd probably rather see two Pacquiao stand in front of each other.
True.
You know,
that's the thing. I think a lot of people, they want the knockouts. That's what draws anybody to the sport. It took me a couple of years to understand the beauty of grappling. It took somebody like Randy Couture. I had to see Randy Couture in action to understand what Greco-Roman wrestling was. I could never understand or appreciate what wrist control meant, or the small foot stomps that he'd use to cause small winces in the department. And the way he would break down bigger opponents was just a beauty to see. And it was incredible.
There's a lot more going on than just the violence that you're watching as you sit back in your lazy boy with a can of beer.
And the chest bleed on the chest tattooed. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, I was one of them as well. So
have your fight gloves on, you know.
But you know what, Steve, before we let you go though, I've got one last question for you from Somesh and I. It's, you know, there are so many, MMA is such a growing sport in India, and there are fighters coming up from everywhere, and there are more and more there were in fact a couple of questions come up to us on our podcast page. Was how does someone go about, getting into the sport of refereeing? Now, I'm sure there are refereeing schools all across the world, and all major referees teach. But what advice would you give to anybody who's looking to become a referee?
Well, you go to that local promoter and you tell them you want to referee, and you start there, or you go to that local sanctioning body. Gosh, I'm sorry, I can't start naming them off, but I got a lot of friends in India that are involved in it. My friend Radhika, who I first met her husband, Arif, in Thailand in 2001 with the Muay Thai national India team. Got rested in peace. He was a Eskrima champion, and he brought the whole team there to Thailand. And that's how I got my relationship to a lot of people in India. But yeah, you just gotta, and then you gotta go to the gym and get in there with the fighters and develop that balls to make the calls. I mean, when I first started refereeing, I would go to the boxing gym. We only had 2 boxing gyms. So I was in the ring with Sugar Ray Leonard, some great fighters. How do I walk up Sugar Ray Leonard and say, hey, keep him up, or don't stop hitting behind the head as he's sparring with his partners? But that's what it takes, I mean, anybody can get out there, dance around and look pretty, and not do anything.
True.
But and then my first time that I really said, man, this is a good thing. The fighters appreciate you being there, because if somebody's not pointing out the little things, because their trainer ain't going to say nothing most of the time. Oh, grab the cage, do this. You're hitting him in the back of the head. No, that takes a up and coming referee to go there and say, hey, dude, you're hitting him in the back of the head. That's going to cost you a point in a real fight, or keep the blows up. I'd have fighters come up to me later and say, hey, dude, man, thanks a lot. I actually got penalized for low blows in my last fight. True. And these are like top rated 10 boxers,
right.
That they need a referee out there too, to learn how to work around the referee, and you just go to the gym and do all your stuff there. That's a good place for a up and coming referee to look for the things that are wrong, look for the thing. Hey, watch your fingers, do this, do that. And then maybe when they're clearing the ground, to see that they're all the way clear before that other fighter dumps the knee in, Right. So that's where you start getting the balls to make the calls. And then you move into then you start talking to your promoter or your local sanctioning body. And that's how that would work.
I like how the screen shook the minute he
be ready. Yeah. Be ready. Just be ready for the opportunity that affords you. Don't go out there and screw it up.
That's perfect. That's perfectly put. And ladies and gentlemen, I just got to say that it's been such an incredible pleasure that Somesh, Kamra, and I have been able to bring to you only on the Fighting GOAT, the one and only Steve Mazzagatti. Thank you so much, Steve, for being here.
Thank you.
For joining us with all the Indian fans listening to you. We can't wait to have you on again. Perhaps maybe, when we hit our 100th episode, we'll get you back on for sure. But till then, we've got a lot more coming up on the next segment. We're going to be right back after a quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere. You've been listening to Steve Mazzagatti only on the Fighting GOAT.
What if you could relive some of the biggest and most public feuds in Indian corporate history?
Peer back through the window of time to see who among HUL or Nirma stood on top.
Or who was more dominant between Tata Motors and Maruti Suzuki?
Tune in with me, Ambi Parmeshwaran.
And me, Anupam Gupta, on Bank of Baroda presents The Last Brand Standing,
where we talk about 2 brands vying for the top position
and what their journeys were.
Every Tuesday on the IVM Podcast app or website,
or wherever you get your podcast from.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the next segment of the Fighting GOAT, where we have just spoken to Mr. Steve Mazzagatti himself, who was kind enough to give us...
Get on!
Let's get on!
Yeah. He's got that tone of his voice also. He does it.
He's such a lean guy, but he's got this little deep voice coming. Let's get it on!
Let's get it on! Come on! Let's get it on! Come on! He does that. I love that.
Man, how enriching was that conversation? 40 years of experience just coming out there. Yes, he could not take names. And he's a thorough professional.
You can't take names. Man.
He's a thorough professional.
But
But
everybody's like us, yeah. I mean, we are khulla, isko gali, usko gali. Sabko gali dene ka. No, come on, no. We're not that bad.
कौन
Come on.
क्या करेगा हमको?
कौन क्या करेगा देखता हूँ मैं.
पता है मेरा बाप कौन है. But yeah, man, that was such an enriching conversation.
It was,
I loved it. In fact, you know what?
You gotta hear it, man.
Yeah,
You gotta go sit down and
hear.
hear the whole segment. It was amazing. I wish we had more time.
I seriously, but I spent about 2 days in Vegas with Steve, and it was so beautiful, because he just is so flowy and chatty about the entire thing, and it's just the entire,
It to jala mata.
it's just the entire amalgamation of 40 years of experience talking to you. It's almost like sitting, with Amir and talking about movies. So it was just so beautiful, and I'm so glad he gave us time and answered all our questions. And
now we are even. Now you hung out with him in the desert. I chilled with Govinda at a party. Remember?
Yeah.
I chilled with Govinda at a party, and nobody can take that away from me. I spent time with Chichi, bro. That's it. No, but of course, man, as a fan, I would always be jealous of, spending time with legends, whether they're referees, whether they're fighters, whether they're,
right.
Any part of that business.
Right.
And they're all amazing.
Fact,
that fight
in fact, I
is
tell
amazing.
I tell everyone that just go out there, spend time with experienced people, enrich yourself, see how they think, what they do. And there's so much that can be learned. Like what Steve rightly said, that, I mean, you can become a good referee just by being there and calling fights.
Exactly.
Be it small fights.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Just be
go to
there.
the local gym and just start doing it.
Start making the calls and then progress from there, So honestly,
He's almost motivated me to start now.
Exactly. And honestly, he said nothing beats hard work because he's a firefighter and he did this in the side, So
that's amazing, man.
Everybody have 2-3 jobs. I think.
Do you think I could be a referee though?
I just think you're too passionate, because by chance someone doesn't agree, maybe you'll just give them an elbow and say, listen, I'll be
the worst referee, dude.
तेरे को 3 बार बोला ना कि cage मत पकड़.
So I'm not a big fan of as much as I love grappling, I don't really like grappling. So the minute it goes to the ground, ut. But I was in mount. Nahi tu ut.
Maximum time 3 seconds.
If you're not submitted within 3 seconds, fuck you. But sir, I was in mount. I'm getting the arm. Nahi tu ut. Stand him up.
No, but there are some referees in India, where after the athlete has got choked out completely for 16 days, they still don't stop the fight. Yeah?
I know who you're referring to, and I'm not going to say anything. But that being said, Mr. Kamra.
But yeah, what's coming up in the following week?
Yes, sir.
Is very, very exciting because unfortunately, the UFC fight card is not totally ready. It's not with us, but the main event of the evening has been confirmed in the light heavyweight division. Anthony Smith is going to face Ryan Spann, and that's what's coming up.
That's awesome, man. Anthony Smith and Ryan Spann. Man, we spoke about resurgences in careers, and we talked about how, Darren Till is going to make his way back. We talked about how Derek Brunson is on a tear now. He's on a 5-fight winning streak. That's somebody else who went through a bit of a slump. Anthony Smith had gone through a big slump after he lost to John Jones, and now has started to make his way back. He's joined a new camp. He won his last fight, albeit by, it was a damaged leg against the Australian. Anthony Smith, won that fight in the second round, but he's going to be looking good. And I think, it's a great opportunity for Ryan Spann as well. He's going to be taking on a former title challenger. It's going to be a great fight all around.
Absolutely, yes. In fact, the gentleman that we were talking about was Jimmy Crute that he beat.
Yes.
And Ryan Spann himself is on a winning streak. He has beaten Misha Serkunov. So both the fighters are on a winning streak. I feel Ryan Spann has a big jump out here. Injurious Lionheart. Let's see how this goes. But Chips, if we go down to the prediction of this one, who is your pick? Ryan Spann or Lionheart Smith?
I'm going to go with the Lionheart Anthony Smith. He showed a lot of maturity in his last fight. He showed a lot of patience. He waited for his strikes, and when he struck, he unleashed hell. You saw that against Jimmy Crute. Those leg kicks looked on point. It's by design. There are kicks that are designed to deaden that leg, that nerve which goes dead in the leg. It was designed. He kicked at the right spot. is those low calf kicks which did the damage. And that's what, incapacitated Jimmy Crute in that fight. So I'm going to give it. To Anthony Smith. He's going to come in with a good strategy. And Ryan Spann, dangerous as he is well. You can't count either one of them out, but I would still go with Lionheart. I think it's time to roar, so to speak.
That's a very, very logical pick. However, I am somehow siding with Ryan Spann on this one. I don't know why. I'm getting a little bit of a ticklish feeling that Ryan Spann may pull off an upset. So I'm going to be going for the opposite party, which is Ryan the Superman Spann.
It's a good thing we stopped keeping count, It's a good thing we stopped keeping count. It's become a fun game now.
Now it's just a guessing game. But you know what? Let's see how it goes. I'm really looking forward to Ion Cutelaba versus Damon Clark also on this one. It's not officially on the card, but it's touted to be there. Yep. But ladies and gentlemen, if you guys need to win some exciting prizes, please make your pick. Tag us, hashtag us on all the social media platforms, IVM Podcast on Twitter, IVM Podcast on Facebook, IVM Podcast on Instagram. If you want to tag me, which you should, if you need to win the prize, on Instagram, it is somesh.kamra, and on Twitter, it's somesh_kamra. Chips, please, your email ID, your Insta IDs. Sorry,
yes,
not email ID. Email
Insta
ID
and Twitter.
only for the girls.
No, email ID, there's enough of spam coming my way anyway. But my Instagram...
Ryan Spam.
Ryan Spam. Marega wo aapko yaar. Anyway, coming back, my Instagram ID is at Arjun Chips. My Twitter handle is at The Mystic Chip. Is that The Mystic Chips or The Mystic Chip? Just check it out. But that being said, guys, thank you for all the guys who wrote to us last week. Thank you for giving us all, your favorite 3 Pride fighters versus your favorite 3 current fighters. Thank you so much for writing in. We're going to reveal that in our next show. We're going to talk about who all said what, along with our own picks, which will come next week on our next special show. But that being said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to check out this amazing episode with the one and only Steve Mazzagatti. You'll be listening to him exclusively along with my partner Somesh Kamra and I, Arjun, the Mystic Chips, only on The Fighting Goat. Stay tuned for a lot more action and lot more shows only on IVMPodcast.com. Ciao and sayonara.
Do you like true crime stories?
Do you like to learn about the people behind some horrible, awful crimes?
More specifically, women that may have committed these crimes.
Actually, Indian criminals that are women?
Then we'd like to welcome you to our podcast, Misconduct. My name is Raghavi.
And I am Nisha.
We cover themes like murder, dacoity, drug trafficking, financial fraud, kidnapping, and many more.
You can catch us every Wednesday on the IVM Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcast.
Season 3 of Echoes of India, your favorite history podcast, is back on the IVM Podcast Network. I'm your host, Anirudh Kanasetti. Join me on a journey through the wonders of early India as we explore the centuries between Buddha and Ashoka with critical research, empathy, and great storytelling. Along the way, you'll hear from all the vibrant peoples who shaped our world, from monks and farmers to warriors and emperors. New episodes are out every Monday.